Huge thank you to all of our sponsors. The whole Ascend conference and this session couldn't happen without your support and without your sponsorship. So thank you very much for that as well. And hello to all of you. My name's Daniel Smith. I'm the sales manager or the business development manager for the Manhattan One application. I've worked in the industry for about 20 years. 6 years of that I was working with MRI Software on their real estate investment management software, and for the subsequent 10 years I've been working with the Manhattan One IWMS platform. Across all of that time, I've been working with clients of all shapes and sizes across many different countries to help them optimize their real estate portfolio using software to do so. More recently, around the corporate real estate world, allowing organizations to manage almost every aspect of the corporate real estate life cycle, from lease management all the way through to booking rooms and desks. But all of that time really looking at real world business requirements and aligning deliverable software solutions to deliver a return on investment back to the organizations, essentially through streamlining business processes, centralizing and increasing quality of data, and making decision-making more accessible and more accurate based on a holistic view of all of the data that they would need to take into account to make these decisions. In the session today, we're going to be looking at a number of topics. Initially, in the world of COVID that we are living with at the moment, the concept of returning to the office and the words around flexible workspace, hybrid working, going to have to spend a little bit of time looking at that. Going to look at the Manhattan One software application and what that entails, and then dialing down on some of the functions in that system to look at those that can support workspace optimization, and then unpacking that a little bit to look at the features, functions and benefits that can be had from the various parts of the software that support the concept of optimizing the workspace. Essentially looking at the space that we have, how people can interact with that space, and the data that we can take out of the back of that to make more informed decisions and improve the experience for everyone as it relates to our corporate workspace. So the demand for flexible space. In the current environment, you will have seen probably many different stories out there in the media relating to the new way of working, how the workplace will change, returning to the office, returning to the workplace. And many different organisations have taken a range of approaches and made a range of statements about their visions for this new future. From those that are saying that essentially the old way of working, where people are sat at desks, is gone, and that most of their workforce, or almost exclusively all of their workforce, will be working from home most of the time, through to others that are spending an awful lot of money refurbishing and fitting out their workspaces for a new envisaged way of working, perhaps implementing more collaborative workspaces and more hybrid workspaces, and doing away with the old one person to one desk sort of ratio. Others have been completely rethinking their workspaces altogether and perhaps moving away from the large centralized corporate offices that they used to have to something that could be more akin to a hub and spoke approach, where perhaps they do have a centralized corporate office that can be used for collaboration, but have a disseminated, more regional, smaller office approach so that people can work together but closer to home, so without the long commutes into a central metropolitan area, for example. You also have those that have taken the approach to say, well, actually, we think that the new way of working will be very much like the old way of working. We need people back in the office as soon as possible. We need them sitting at the desks that they had before, because we need them, or we believe that that way of working supports them the best in order to undertake the roles that they have in the organisation, that they need to be in the same office, relatively close in proximity to their colleagues, because that will support the best way of working. Now, of course, all of these ways of working could be right for those organisations, and therefore a one-size-fits-all approach is not going to be the way to go. And actually, we're yet to find out what these new trends are going to be. They're still opaque to us. We're going to have to a certain degree, allow the dust to settle in order to see how the consumers of the space that we're providing to them are actually using that, start to interpret the patterns of use and the way of working, and then start to react to that and try and right-size the portfolio for the way the world will be once we all hopefully get back to working in some way that we can call normal. Now, some of the things that people have been asking us for, and that I'll unpack a little bit as we go through this session, are sort of delivering safe workplaces. So in the current COVID situation, organisations may want some people to be able to get back into the office, and they want to be able to do that in a safe way. That can mean social distancing. It can mean social distancing at the desk, so we don't want people sat too close to each other. It can mean that we want people to provide information ahead of getting to the office. So have you had COVID symptoms recently? Have you had a COVID test recently, and what was the result? And perhaps even in some jurisdictions, whether or not you've had a COVID vaccine or not. Now, there are other things that people might be asking for, that they might be asking for ways of laying out the building in a more collaborative way. So they're thinking further ahead. They're sort of envisaging that people will be going to the office in order to collaborate rather than do one person working. Perhaps the personal working time will be spent at home, and they'll go to the office for more collaborative activities. So how do they rework the office and manage that as well? And looking again into the future, you'll see the trajectory that perhaps was started pre-COVID and might be accelerated by COVID as we come out of it, in order to provide people with a flexible address, a free address workspace. So you come into the office, nobody's assigned a desk, simply go up and sit down at the desk that suits you on that particular day. And for the organisation to start to understand these patterns and simply provide the right number of desks, the right type of workspaces for this type of working that's taking place, without people necessarily having to reserve that space all of the time. And all of this is done in order to try and balance the demands of the workforce and the organisation with the supply of space that you have. Essentially looking at the locations that you can actually acquire through purchase or through leasing, and what that looks like in your current portfolio and with the portfolio that's coming down your pipeline, and with the current demands on your space and the way that space demand might change going forward. So you might have parts of the organisation providing you with forecasts of the expansion or contraction of their team, forecasts around how they might be working going forwards, and of course the trends that you're seeing emerging that might inform these decisions as well. So Manhattan One. Manhattan One is a market-leading IWMS. It has been independently assessed as such since the IWMS term was first coined back in the early 2000s. In fact, Manhattan One was one of, if not the founding system that really defined the acronym of IWMS. IWMS being Integrated Workplace Management Software, or Integrated Workplace Management System, whichever you prefer. I like that moniker and dislike it with equal measure. I like it because it allows you to very quickly define sort of what we do, and for people to very quickly understand the concept. But on the flip side, it does constrain us somewhat. We've been doing what we're doing in one shape or form before the IWMS moniker was placed upon us, and labels of any type tend to constrain you somewhat by the bounds of that label. And really what we're trying to do is constantly push the boundaries of that and expand that definition, if you like, by providing an ever-increasing number of features, functions and benefits to our clients. Still focused around corporate real estate, but as that IWMS boundary has been pushed, we've seen the functionality extend from the traditional lease management and accounting thereof into facilities and maintenance management, into space and space utilisation and room and desk booking. And of course, those start to bridge upon different departments that our organisation might already have. So facilities teams, human resources, accounting, all of these things come together in some way, shape or form to provide us with the people, the infrastructure, the decision making that we need to undertake in order to manage the real estate portfolio for our current and future needs. All of that is supported inside the Manhattan One integrated platform. It is a cloud-based application. You can take as much or as little of it as you need to support the business functions and requirements that you have. But a lot of our clients that may start with one particular feature or one particular section of the software are really taking comfort from the fact that it is fully integrated. So they can replace legacy systems or grow into other areas of the software as required without the need to implement an entirely new system. And even if you're not using those particular functions today, you do have the native homes for that data that's related to that function that you can import into. So even if you're not using all of the functions in their entirety, you can collate all of your real estate data in one place and have that 360-degree view of all of the pieces of data that you would like to have access to in order to make these more informed decisions. Because reporting cuts across all of this. And at the end of the day, it's the reporting out of this that really drives the huge amount of benefit, because you can truly understand what you have, truly understand what's going on within your portfolio, and make really informed decisions quickly as well. And then operationalize the results of those decisions in a controlled and swift manner as well. So if we dial down to the space optimization concept, it really, in my mind, is made up of three distinct areas. There's understanding what we have and planning out how we think it should look and how it should be used. Delivering some of that information through to the consumers of the building so that they can take benefit from that data and that they can actually book desks and book meeting rooms, or just understand the capacity that a building has and understand where's busy and where's quiet, where could I navigate to go and find somewhere to go and work. And then receiving back all of the different data points so that we as corporate real estate professionals can understand better the way our buildings are being used and make more informed decisions. And ultimately, you get into a virtuous circle where the feedback is taken in and we can have iterations and improvements made to the layout and the way we provide that space to the consumers of those buildings. And that really breaks down into those three areas that I just gave there. Planning the space, delivering workspace optimization to our employees and the staff that are using those buildings, and then understanding all of that data to make more informed decisions and improve what we're offering. Now let's dial into to planning the space. So in the visual you see in front of you right now, you can see what appears to be a CAD diagram on the screen there. What we've actually done there is we've used the innate functions within Manhattan One to allow us to consume a CAD diagram into the system. I say consumed in a very meaningful way, because it actually extracts all of the layer data inside that CAD diagram and populates the database with that. And we can always recompile and export that CAD diagram back out at any point in time. But once it's in the system, we're able to interact with it. We're able to report through the CAD diagram. We're able to keep that data up to date. So if we do have people in the traditional sense being allocated to desks, we can do that. If we have situations where people or departments are moving, we can create move lists and move people between desks or even between buildings. And again, re-export out all of that information in the CAD diagram if we ever need to, as well as maintaining the polylines. So playing around with desk locations and things like that. We can also maintain what we call the as-built, the current situation on the ground, but we can play out what-if scenarios in there. So copy the as-built, copy everything about the building that we know is in place today, take that into a what-if scenario plan, and really play out a future layout of the building. We can do that as many times as we see fit. We can play it through different scenarios, we can play it through different authorization processes, and eventually push that round through projects perhaps into being the new as-built. In that what-if scenario plan, we're able to use things like the COVID social distancing algorithms to understand what the desk optimization layout would be, or which desks would be available and which we should take out of circulation, if you like, if we were to apply a 1.5, a 2 metre, a 3 metre, 6 foot, 8 foot social distancing policy in the office. So apply that algorithm automatically. The system automatically denotes which desks should be taken out of circulation. And if you approve that layout, you can push those desks through to our room and desk booking functions so that people can then understand which desks are available and start to book those. There's many more functions in there, being able to add additional layers, being able to overlay with perhaps evacuation routes, being able to interrogate the system to find out which spaces meet certain criteria. Perhaps highlight in blue all of the workstations that are available. Put some hash marks over the top of it if that workstation also has a UPS, uninterrupted power supply, and any other sort of attribute that you might be looking for as well. So you can use it really to sort of understand what you have as well as plan out the way it may work in the future. So once you've done that, you want to push that information out to the consumers of that space so that they can start to understand what's available to them and perhaps book these facilities for their own use. Now, there are many different user interfaces for this, a desktop view, a plugin that goes along with things like Outlook 365. So as you're booking a meeting, you can also book a meeting room as well as all the services that might go along with that. But we also have a mobile device as well. So if you play out the scenario that I'm going to the office, I'm on the train, I've forgotten to book that meeting room or that desk, I can do that directly from my mobile device. And I can enjoy some of that CAD diagram information as well, because that same CAD diagram that our space manager has been planning out the building with can then be viewed on the mobile device or on the desktop view as well. So I can search for rooms and desks that meet my requirements, so I know which building I'm going to. Perhaps I've been allocated to a particular floor or neighbourhood that my department should be working in. And I have certain requirements. Perhaps I need a meeting room for 5 people, and so don't show me meeting rooms that only seat 3 people, for example. But I can also, other than looking through lists that meet my criteria, also be presented with the space plan. So colour-coded to show me which desks or meeting rooms meet my criteria. So I can actually see exactly where they are and potentially use that to wayfind if I'm not familiar with that part of the building or that facility. We also have a find a colleague capability in there as well. So if I'm going to the office today to meet with Peter, I can also look up to find out where Peter is normally seated, where he's booked today, and if there's a meeting room that he's booked as well. I can find all of that through the app and then perhaps book a desk in the same region or facility as he is, so that we can work more easily with each other. So lots of other features and functions in that booking capability, not least the ability to book meeting rooms multiple across different jurisdictions. If I'm booking for me in the London office and a colleague in the New York office, perhaps I also want to book hardware to come to this meeting room. I need a projector to be delivered, and perhaps I also want to book tea and coffee as well as lunch. So it's a meeting for the entire day, and I want to schedule the tea and coffee to come in the morning, and I want the lunch obviously to come in the middle of the day, and for not all of that to be delivered at the same point in time. And of course, there are a facilities team that are delivering these things to us, and so there are user interfaces and apps for those guys to let them know what needs to be delivered where, when, and what's been completed, as well as, of course, room managers so that they can understand what's going on in the building, as well as do those necessary adjustments if they need to swap meeting rooms because other things are coming up. Of course, COVID is at the forefront of what we're thinking about all the time at the moment as well. So some of the features we've introduced in order to assist with this, some of which I've mentioned already earlier on in the session. So something we call the attestation. So before I even log into the app, I'm presented with whatever my organisation has decided are appropriate questions for me at that particular location. So things like asking me if I've had any COVID symptoms recently, if I've undertaken a COVID test recently. And of course, the way I respond to that will then determine whether or not I am allowed into the app in order to book a desk. And if I haven't booked a desk, then under the COVID situation, I shouldn't be going to the office, because we want to ensure that everyone that comes to the office knows that they have a desk booked for their purposes and that they can go straight to that desk. Now, of course, cleaning is incredibly important under these COVID situations. So knowing that somebody has booked a desk means that we can trigger cleaning services before and after that particular booking, and that we can actually control the period of time that people are allowed to book for. So, and again, that is something that you can change over time as well. So under COVID, we might say, well, we can't really facilitate the cleaning of desks more than once a day, and therefore people should be booking desks for the entire day, regardless of how long they actually intend on sitting there. But as we exit COVID and as we exit the pandemic and we return to a new way of working under the new normal, we might reduce the length of time that people have to book a desk for and provide them with 15-minute, half an hour, 1 hour, half day intervals that they can book for, but still potentially triggering cleaning services in the intermediate times. Now, of course, if as an organisation we can't provide cleaning every single day, we might want to utilise something that we call the AB policy. So on perhaps Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, the A group of desks is in use, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the B group of desks are in use. And that means that in totality, we only have to clean every 2 days in order to maintain safety of all of those different workplaces. Now, another concept that's very popular is the concept of the neighbourhood. Now, I mentioned it a bit earlier, where we can sort of define a particular area, perhaps a bank of desks or a particular half of a floor, and allocate that to a particular department or business unit. And that means that everyone that's associated with accounting might also then be associated with the accounting neighbourhood. And that's simply a way at a high level of tracking people against areas rather than people against desks in perhaps the older way of doing it. But in the booking function, people that are associated to neighbourhoods will also be driven towards that neighbourhood in the app in order to book the location that they are going to work in that day. And that really means that although we're not enforcing people, one person, one desk, we are to a degree trying to keep departments that tend to work together booking spaces in a similar vicinity. But you again also have that find a friend, find a colleague concept in there. So if I do want to work with one specific individual, I can also look up where they're seated and where they're working on that day as well. Now, checking into a desk or a meeting room is something that we often get asked for, and I've got a QR code up on the screen here, because not only are we allowing people to check into meeting rooms through their mobile devices, but we're also allowing them to reserve a desk or a room or check into a room or a desk via QR codes as well. And these are, of course, very cheap and quick and easy to deploy. You simply print them out and stick them where you need them. And the business process then, or the use case then, is that the staff member might not have booked that desk or meeting room in advance. And of course, they could still go and search for that desk or meeting room in the apps. But why not, if I'm stood right by the desk and it's available, why not just scan that QR code, be taken directly to the booking function for that particular desk or meeting, and book it. And the same is true then of checking in. So I can scan the QR code, check in, and the booking is officially begun. Now, in your organisation, you might want to have a no-show policy. So if people have booked things but don't turn up to that booking, which does happen, so often I've heard from organisations that they believe that the building is fully occupied and working well, but you just have to walk down any corridor and look into the meeting rooms and you see that they're empty. So what you want to ensure is that people that are booking these things are actually turning up to them. And that's where the check-in, of course, helps. But if they don't turn up, then that room or that desk can automatically be put back into the pool for other people to book for their own use. And you can configure the length of time ahead of that sort of being pushed back into the pool that the desk will be retained within the booking. So perhaps if I don't turn up within 15 minutes of the start time of the booking, then it will be put back into the pool. And there's a self-policing that goes on there, because of course if I booked a meeting room and not checked in, then of course other people can legitimately book that room and I will lose my space, and they'll have the right to come in and start using that space. But you can also use that sort of behind the scenes to go and have a quiet word, if you like, with the people that are most repeat offenders, and that can start to police itself, of course. Now, so QR codes are great; they're nice and cheap and easy to deploy. But we also have some other features and hardware that can support you in this journey as well. So at the moment, we're looking at a desk puck. These are ostensibly to give you a visual clue. So color-coded, red, amber, green, blue, depending on the status of that particular desk. So red, I'm booked, I'm in use. Amber, I'm booked, but I'm not in use yet. Green, I'm free and available, come and use me. So from a distance, I can look across the office and see these desk pucks and navigate immediately to a desk that's available, and then book that desk for my use for that particular period of time. So these are fairly quick and easy to deploy. They can be attached to Wi-Fi as well as Ethernet cables. They can be powered over Ethernet or with battery supply, and they're pretty unassuming but quite attractive things to have on the desks. We also have a similar technology that sits outside of meeting rooms, so we call these the Lifesign Pros. Similarly to the desk pucks, they are color-coded, so those LED lights will change color depending on the status of the room. Similarly to the pucks that yellow, it's booked but not in use yet, and red, of course, it is booked and currently in use, green, I'm available. These are powered over Ethernet as well as battery as well. Now, these are also RFID or NFC enabled, so if you have security tags in your organization, or indeed if you have any item that is NFC enabled, that is a unique identifier that can be associated with a particular person or user in your organization, and they can use that security tag, for example, to swipe across that screen and log into the screen. And be able to use that screen both to interrogate the meetings that are coming up in that room and or book that room for my purposes, as well as check into that room so that we can start the meeting. Now, all of that information pulls back into our central database, so we as the space managers and facilities team can understand how our building is performing from a bookings perspective. Now, we can augment and expand upon this data set by drawing other information from hard and soft sensors. Now, what are hard and soft sensors? Well, one type of soft sensor is that booking information. Another type of soft sensor might be some other data that we're already collecting in the building. That could be badge swipe data. So if you've got those security tags and are using that to badge in at the front desk or the front door, perhaps you're using that to badge into the floor that you work on. That data can be captured, obviously anonymized for the purposes of this use case, and fed into our system so it can enrich the understanding of how people are actually using the space and where they're going inside the building if you've got the badge swipes at particular locations around the building. Now, on top of that, you have the concept of sensors. And sensors are an ever-increasing myriad of options out there. They're getting smaller, they're getting better, they're using different ways and means of capturing data, but all of them can allow us to understand how our buildings are being used. Now, the various use cases are such that you can have infrared sensors, heat sensors, camera-based sensors, motion sensors, all these sorts of things that are detecting people moving through spaces, so we can start to understand generally where in the building people are moving to. They can be sensors that cover a bank of desks so that we can understand in a world where people don't necessarily book the desk, where they might just want to turn up, have free address policy in the office, sit down wherever you see a free desk and start to use it. The sensor can sense the presence of that person at that desk, create a booking, if you like, in the booking system so that we know that desk is in use, and also start to record that data for trending later, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Other use cases where we have meeting rooms. I may have booked a meeting room for 5 people, in which case I've been provided with a meeting room that meets the needs that I've suggested, but when the meeting actually starts, the sensor in that room can determine that perhaps there was only 3 people in that meeting room, and so actually a different shape or size of meeting room would have been more appropriate. So again, we can start to understand whether these rooms are really being optimized to their best use for the number of people that are actually in there. So there are other things that those sensors can do, such as tracking whether or not the desk is sort of being ghost occupied, if you like. Perhaps like when you're on vacation, somebody comes along and puts their towel down on the sun lounger and essentially books that sun lounger for the entire day without actually being there. The sensors can also help us with that as well. So we call that a ghost booking or a ghost use. So the example might be that I turn up to the office, I put down my laptop, I put down my bag, and I go off to the coffee machine, and I meet a colleague there and I start a conversation that takes me half an hour. The desk might not look like it's actually being used, but the sensors itself can determine that the bags are there and therefore book that desk even though somebody isn't actually sat at that desk. All of this data can be used in 2 ways, essentially. It can be pushed back into our system and trended over time, so space management professionals can understand how the building is performing and obviously use that information to start to adjust and improve upon how they're providing that space. but it can also be used in real time to enrich the experience of the occupier, of the consumer of that space. So the people that are interacting with the building can also benefit from this sensor IoT type data that's being fed back into the system. So in real time, you can have heat maps, if you like, CAD diagrams, much like you might see in airports or in shopping malls, where you can start to understand how to navigate around the shopping mall. But this becomes a real-time representation of the use of that building. So I can come into the lobby of the building, I can go to the to individual floor plates, and I can see on the wall an interactive, if you like, diagram of that particular space, color-coded by where's available, where's busy, where's quiet, where could I navigate to if I want to work alone, where could I navigate to if I want to work somewhere quiet. All of that can be presented to me in real time, so I'm getting a benefit there. And of course, it pushes through to the mobile apps. So if I want to navigate around the building, or if I want to book something, I know that somebody isn't sitting in the place that I'm looking to book. So you're really delivering a better experience to the consumers of that building, as well as delivering more intelligence and more data and better decision-making capabilities to those people that are responsible for those spaces. So in totality, that really enables that virtuous circle that we spoke about earlier on. Being able to play out those scenarios, turn those scenarios into the as-built, push that data through to room and desk booking functions, so people can really start to make use of that space, start to enrich that experience with IoT data, so people can passively be tracked and understand how that building is really being used by those people. And of course, anonymously tracking is important there for GDPR and other concerns as well. So it is anonymous, of course. And then feeding all that back in so that we can have a holistic view of how our buildings are performing and continuously improve along that journey. That's really what I wanted to cover in the session today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope there were some nuggets of information that you found informative there. If you want to talk to us about any facet of the corporate real estate life cycle, including those that we covered today, planning, occupying and optimising the workplace, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. If you go through the website, you can, of course, book a demonstration or a conversation through there, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you very much.